From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm Ken Rice. UPMC calls its mission life-saving medicine. Its recently announced $2 billion plan to build 3 specialty hospitals in the city could be called life-saving for the Pittsburgh economy. We begin with John Shumway and a look at how these facilities could improve the nation's health and Pittsburgh's importance as a center of cutting-edge care.
Out of the uptown soil, UPMC Vision and Rehabilitation Hospital will join the Boulevard of the Allies skyline next to Mercy Hospital, 410,000 square feet. Surrounded by UPMC Shadyside, the new Hillman Cancer Hospital will sit on both sides of Center Avenue, a combined 400,000 square feet. And on 5th Avenue, where the old Children's Hospital once stood, just in front of UPMC Presby, will rise the UPMC Heart and Transplant Hospital, almost 1 million square feet, and a unique design that the eye won't soon forget. And across all these designs, you see a lot of glass and ties to nature.
The more supportive an environment, comfortable, light, the more they can have people and communicate, even if it's with their screen. We think it'll be a much better healing environment, and I bet we could prove that that improves outcomes as well.
In addition to the high technology throughout, all of the hospitals will provide private rooms only.
And there's ample room for the families to be able to get settled in the room as well.
The new UPMC hospitals will obviously focus on patient care, but they'll also have their eyes on the future.
It's going to create the next generation of science, whether it be immunotherapy, whether it be transplantation with live donors, and in a way that the organs can be tolerated. There is nothing UPMC is not going to or is already leading the way on.
All 3 of the hospitals will go under construction next year. The first will be the Vision and Rehab Center that'll be basically right here next to Mercy Hospital. Uptown, John Shumway, KDKA-TV News.
This morning, we'll hear more about the planning that went into these new specialty healthcare centers in a period of tough competition for the healthcare dollar, changing ways of delivering that care, and challenges for patients to pay for it. Why is UPMC taking this bold step? Our guests are Leslie Davis, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at UPMC, and Dr. Stephen Shapiro, UPMC's Chief Medical and Scientific Officer. David Tribben is away this week, so we welcome back Jerry Micco, Senior Assistant Managing Director of the Post-Gazette News Slide. Jerry, nice to have you here, and thanks to both of you. So people think, wow, there's already a lot of UPMC hospitals in this region. How is it that we need more? So explain to people who are thinking, why all the hospitals? Leslie.
So you know that we have 3 specialty hospitals now, along with our network of 42 hospitals across Pennsylvania.
Specialty being Children's?
Children's, McGee, and Western Psych.
Okay.
And these 3 hospitals are really very special because our scientists and our physicians, like Dr. Shapiro and his colleagues, can invent new technologies and what we call translational science, where we can take these discoveries and move them to our patients right at the bedside, which is so exciting. And then we take these discoveries and these new treatments and we move them across our entire UPMC network of hospitals. So we know that the future will entail more of this specialized care in hospitals, and that's the reason for the 3 new specialty hospitals, which would make 6 in Pittsburgh, and we would be the only academic medical center and integrated delivery and finance system to actually have 6 specialty hospitals.
People wonder about capacity, though, because the Pittsburgh region, for all the exciting things happening, our population is steady. In some reports, you know, we're still shrinking a little bit, nowhere near like we were decades ago. So how is it, with all the expansion you're doing, with all the expansion Allegheny Health is doing, that these are smart financial investments?
I think from our perspective, we are not adding any more beds than we already have today. We're modernizing them. It's going to be a better environment for patient, but there's no increased beds. We too are trying to keep patients healthy and out of the hospital, but the resources we're putting in place will serve our region, but we will be doing such specialized techniques that we are sure that it'll be a draw for patients throughout the country and world.
Let's take, go ahead, Leslie.
I was just going to say to Dr. Shapiro's point, we're adding all private rooms as part of this project. So that's partially why we have to expand. So the footprint gets bigger adding these hospitals, but the bed size stays the same.
So let me piggyback on Ken's question. We talked about Pittsburgh, but really, Is this an effort by UPMC to make this more national and maybe more a world type of thing? Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, bigger name, bigger footprint outside of Pittsburgh.
We already have over 25,000 patients a year that come from outside our region to see us, but we do think this will increase that attraction, not just with the great facilities, but with the types of things we're doing in it. One example would be living donor liver transplants. Right now, as you've seen from the commercials, 2,800 patients a year die on the list because even academic medical centers aren't very comfortable doing the living donor transplant. We are, so this is a place where we're already getting national referrals, and there are other procedures we do that we similarly think would be an opportunity for the country.
Let's take a look at these one at a time, if we can. And let's start with the heart. Give me the correct name for what's going up in Oakland.
The UPMC Heart and Transplant Hospital at UPMC Mercy.
Okay.
Presbyterian.
Okay, and this is, see, even you, it's
All the time.
So this is going where the Children's Hospital in Oakland used to be.
Correct. So the Children's Hospital was in front of Presbyterian. It is now, as you know, in Lawrenceville. And the green space that is in front of the hospital will be the footprint for this bold, iconic design, which will be the Heart and Transplant Hospital.
So one of the things I wondered about in hearing about all your these new facilities is you already have this cutting edge medicine being practiced at Presby, at the existing building. What happens at Presby when you shift over to the new building?
We are going to keep what is at Presby, where our design teams are now looking at what makes sense to be in the new tower versus the older tower, how we're going to, we've been sprucing up those floors and renovating them one at a time over the last 10 years. So the idea is for this to be a seamless transition from one building to the other. The Montefiore building will be essentially outpatient services over a period of time. So that's the longer term plan, that we would have a nice outpatient area that would be easy to access, and then inpatient facilities that would feel very easy and well appointed for all of the patients beyond heart and transplant. So Presbyterian will remain a full-service hospital.
Well, I'm just thinking, though, if you're not expanding the number of total beds, I'm thinking, well, there must be some repurposing then of your existing facilities.
Private beds and repurposing to outpatient for others.
Okay. At the Uptown site near Mercy Hospital, that is the Vision and Rehabilitation
Hospital at UPMC Mercy.
Okay. And tell us what is unique about this project.
So I'm going to start, and then I would like Dr. Shapiro to talk about the science, but we have recruited Dr. Jose Sahel from Paris, he will cure blindness in that building. That's what's unique about it. His team is able to take care of patients with low vision or issues related to rehabilitation, which often go together with vision. And so this building will be very easy to navigate. Actually, one of our architects is suffering from blindness, and he is part of the team that's looking at the adaptation that's needed for patients who would come through this building and through this space. So it's really, really.
And did I read that part of this facility is going to be built to help patients who have limited visibility manage their lives, real life living environments?
Right, as Leslie mentioned, one of the architects is blind and is helping, but Dr. Sahel has also done this in Paris, and we're adapting and putting that in here as well. In addition, this will have a research component as well, where Dr. Sahel and his team will do things like they have strategies to stop the destruction of the macula with age-related macular degeneration, leading cause of blindness with aging. And again, is thinking of the brain as a computer, trying to, just like we have driverless Uber cars out there and other as well, we could bypass the eye and send signals to the brain and restore vision. Gene therapy, there are a lot of things that they'll be working on, but we really do, as Leslie mentioned, think we can cure blindness for a number of people.
Fascinating. And then in Shadyside now, you're really talking about another campus. You know, I think of the Oakland buildings as a campus. Now in Shadyside, you're crossing Center Avenue. Describe that project.
So this one's a little more complex because we'd be putting up two buildings rather than one. One of the buildings will be contiguous to the existing Shadyside Hospital. There will then be a walkway that takes patients across a ramp over Center Avenue to a nice outpatient center, which then would be connected to the Hillman, so we would be able to basically walk inside throughout all of our cancer services. And again, these things are in early design at this point. We're talking about breaking ground probably in 2023, and we have teams of architects and clinicians and administrative working on what would be best. And to your question earlier, what are the legacy services that remain in the existing buildings? Because Shadyside will remain a full-service hospital as well.
So, I'm sorry, 2023 is groundbreaking for which project?
For both the Shadyside Hillman Cancer Hospital and the Heart and Transplant Hospital.
Okay, and the Uptown, the Mercy site?
2020, we're breaking ground this year, and we should be completed by 2021 on that one.
Okay, there's another project that UPMC is involved in with the University of Pittsburgh Medical School in Bloomfield. Dr. Shapiro, what's that about?
That is a research facility that will house, among other things, our immunotherapy initiatives, which will directly relate to Shadyside campus and the cancer hospital just down the street. And we think of immunotherapy rather broadly. We want to arm T cells to kill tumors, which is one of the greatest advances that we've seen, but there's a lot of work to do. Being a transplant mecca, we would like to disarm the immune system to allow patients to receive organs without the need for the chronic toxic immunosuppressive drugs. And then we throw aging in there. It's in part a loss of adaptive immunity as well as tissue destruction, but we think that so much of what we see is related to aging that is a main focus of that building and the science that we will do there as well.
That's an old Ford warehouse, right? Baum Boulevard? Right. All right, let's take a break. We'll continue here on the KDPG Sunday edition. Big plans for UPMC. We'll be back in just a moment.
Community Bank, the better business bank.
Cracked walls, foundation damage, water seepage. Does this sound familiar? If so, trust the professionals at J&D Waterproofing. They specialize in foundation repair and basement waterproofing. J&D Waterproofing is dedicated to customer satisfaction, serving the area since 1939. So if you have cracked walls, foundation damage, or water seepage, call the professionals at J&D Waterproofing at 1-800-VERY-DRY.
The end of day, that's the relief you'll feel from the body's soothing serenity. Relief from middleman markups and a hard day's work. That's the Original Mattress Factory. Thoughtfully made, honestly priced.
Where should you buy a new GMC truck? BudBearGMC.com. We are professional grade.
At Thermo Twin Windows, customer satisfaction is a beautiful thing. From concept to creation to delivery, every Thermo Twin window is handcrafted by a team of dedicated employee owners. Our customers know Thermo Twin Windows is more than just a company. It's a family that has been serving the Pittsburgh area for 46 years. Right now, celebrate fall and get up to 30% off each window. Thermo Twin Windows, employee owned, Pittsburgh made.
Pain cream. Honey, you smell just like my Walter used to.
Don't smell like Walter. Aspercream is odor-free for maximum pain relief without that Walter smell. Aspercream. No pain, no odor.
Discover all we have to offer. SoldiersandSailorsHall.org or our calendar of events.
Welcome back to the KDPG Sunday edition. We're talking about the future of UPMC this morning and its plans for new specialty hospitals and more in the city of Pittsburgh. We're joined by Leslie Davis, Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer at UPMC, and Dr. Stephen Shapiro, UPMC's Chief Medical and Scientific Officer. You have so much going on, Leslie Davis. It's hard even for you to keep track of what's happening. So clarify the dates, if you will.
Right, so much going on. So 2019 will be breaking ground on the two projects, the Heart and Transplant Hospital and the Shadyside Hospital, Cancer Hospital, UPMC Hillman, and in 2023, we plan to have those hospitals open. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're talking about a 5-year window.
5-year window,
Okay.
and we'll have these 3 new specialty hospitals up and running for our community.
Okay. We talked about a project, Dr. Shapiro, in Bloomfield, where UPMC is working with the University of Pittsburgh Medical School on new immunotherapy drugs, treatments. How unusual is it for a hospital system and a university to essentially attempt to become their own pharmaceutical company?
It is unusual. I think that there is an effort to have generic drugs be made in part through some hospital systems, but nobody really has taken on the task of creating new therapies within the walls of a university and health system. What generally happens is all the intellectual capital that goes into new therapy is done by university scientists and physicians. The trials are done there, and then the pharmaceutical industry benefits, and we have trouble paying for those drugs. We would like to start our own internal venture such that our scientists don't have to leave and their ideas don't have to leave the university and UPMC in order to create these drugs. So we're trying to create companies and do science. We're doing very basic science, but also to do very translational science, all within the context and walls of our system.
And this will benefit patients, hopefully, because expenses will be lower. And does it also mean getting cutting-edge research translated into actual therapies and available to patients in Pittsburgh more quickly?
It'll be available to patients in Pittsburgh more quickly, and also these products will be sold and everyone will benefit. And so Pittsburgh will be the home for this.
Okay.
One of the things that you mentioned, and you talk about the cooperation and working with the University of Pittsburgh and doing that type of thing, one of the things you've had to do this massive project is work with all the communities involved, and I know that UPMC has done that. How has that gone, and how is it going? It's an ongoing thing. You're going to break ground next year. You're going to have hospitals built in 5 years. So is this still an ongoing process for UPMC to work with those communities?
It's always an ongoing process. We're very, very engaged with each of our communities, in each of our hospitals, whether it's in the city, whether it's in Oakland or Bloomfield, or in our 42 other communities across Pennsylvania. We're in a small community now in New York State. We're having discussions with a hospital system in Maryland. It's very important that we stay closely connected with the communities that serve and are important to our hospitals. So yes.
And this is, and just to follow up, especially in Uptown and places in Oakland too, there's areas you're going to have to build on that are going to take some land and some room. How does that process get done? That's not always very easy to do, but it seems like you've mastered at least some of that. Again, that's an ongoing thing, is it not? That's something you have to keep working on and keep working with the community on. Jobs, same thing?
Right, so these projects bring a lot of opportunity to each of the communities. When you think about the number of jobs, the number of new jobs that will be needed in these hospitals, the jobs just related to the construction of these buildings, the ancillary technology and businesses that are created as a result of these new facilities. Let's look at Lawrenceville. I mean, look what's happened in Lawrenceville over the last 10 years with our new children's hospital, really changing the landscape of Lawrenceville with new restaurants and new hotels and new, again, spin-off businesses, medical businesses related to the hospital. So that's what we do. We work with the community. The Mercy Project is set to go. The community's very excited about it. And there's lots of cooperation and opportunity between the community groups and UPMC.
So while you're planning these big showcase hospitals in the city, Allegheny Health has taken a different approach with neighborhood hospital. They have mini hospitals where it's maybe 10 beds, but a 24/7 ER. How would you describe the approach that you're taking as you look to the future and the approach that they're taking? And I know that you both watch each other closely.
Well, I would just point out that we haven't given up on the community. We're very focused on keeping our patients healthy as possible at home and in their community, and we do that with a footprint that we have already in the community that we think is pretty substantial. We don't think we need to change that. although we are doing more with home remote monitoring and other ways to keep the patients even at their own home. So while our goal is to keep patients healthy and at home, sometimes they get really sick, and for that we're really focusing on these new specialty hospitals for the patients that really need it.
And there's room in the market for everything that they're doing and everything that you're doing.
We'll see. We can't, I mean, I never like to comment on what anyone else is doing. I just stay focused on what we're doing. And what we're doing is creating the right kind of health care in each of the 42 communities that we serve. We already have hospitals that we're working with very closely. We also work with many independent community hospitals, especially in Western Pennsylvania. These are great community hospitals who we work collaboratively with in either supplying physicians or helping them run their emergency departments. So our strategy is not one that requires us to build small little hospitals in different regions. We're sticking to working with the hospitals that we already own or we affiliate with, as well as this incredible opportunity to build 6, now it'll be 3, great specialty hospitals. And as you said, hospitals that will attract patients not just from Pennsylvania, but from across the country and from around the world.
You're not only trying to bring more patients here, but I'm sure you're trying to bring new staff here. So I'm curious, Dr. Shapiro, in your daily life, what percentage of your time is spent while Leslie and others are working on the buildings? You have to bring in the best people you can find to work in these buildings and to make all of the visions that you have come true.
We absolutely are in competition for the best physicians and scientists in the world. Dr. Sahel is an example coming from Paris. We've got unbelievable recruitment that people want to come here. These new hospitals will make it even that much more attractive just to work in an environment that is beautiful and healing environment, as well as coming together with all the other scientists. But we've got great critical mass in all these areas, making it more and more attractive. Even this morning before I met with you, a lady from California just visited us who has ideas of growing livers in test tubes. So it's a lot of interesting things going on.
So would she be Oakland or Shadyside or
She would be in the transplant hospital. She's good. Putting them out of business.
What does Jeff Romoff mean when he talks about UPMC becoming the Amazon of healthcare? He wants to offer many more services than are currently provided?
So we're working with Amazon as well as with our own enterprise group to develop technology that makes it easier for patients, humanizing technology so that patients can use these tools to be empowered over their health care. We also are using technology for caregivers so that our physicians, let's say, can use analytics to help them make decisions over care, treatment, and so forth. One of the things we showed during the press conference was some of the touch screens that we're creating in patient rooms. So patients can actually touch a screen and see their own medical record. I mean, how great is that? Or to be able to touch a screen and be able to talk to a specialist who may not be able to get to the hospital room while, let's say, the liver specialist is in the room, or the primary care doc can dial in and be part of that conversation. Or a patient can touch the screen and just be able to FaceTime with her children in the evening because they can't come down to the hospital.
So maybe I understood what he meant then. You're talking about improved technology, which all sounds great.
That's part of it?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It is both. I mean, Amazon, the way they disrupted retail, they're going to do that to healthcare as well. So in one respect, they are our competition as much as anyone else. And what we're saying is we need to disrupt ourselves. There is so much more opportunity, and we would like to add the technology focus as well as the translational science to build a new healthcare system.
These buildings that you're planning and what your competitors are doing, are you aware of any other city, any other metro area in the country that has this kind of activity going in its education, in its medical sector?
No.
No.
And
but to your point, I think our real competitive, we don't really worry what's happening locally with another hospital.
Come on,
or
a little. You do a
system.
little, right? This has been.
We want to care for our patients.
We worry about the Amazons and, you know, the national insurers, and that's why we have our own insurance plan. And those are the real disruptors. Pharma, and which is why we're creating our own line of new technology and new drugs. These are the real disruptions to the traditional healthcare system as we know it today.
That's very interesting. It's those concerns that would have been very different 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right? So when people think of Amazon, they think, oh boy, I can buy anything I want there. But some people also, as you said, they're disruptive. People who may own bookstores or small businesses think, oh my God, Amazon has crushed us. You're talking about becoming like Amazon, I can only assume in the most benevolent sense.
We must disrupt ourselves, and we need to change our business model. Amazon makes it really easy to get for the consumer to use them. We need to be much easier to use as physicians. We're trying to change our business model as well.
One more time, the dates. Groundbreaking next year.
We will groundbreak next year.
And then within 5 years.
And within 4 to 5 years, we will have these beautiful hospitals up and running.
All right, we're out of time. Leslie Davis, Dr. Steve Shapiro, thank you so much. We'll be back with some final thoughts in just a moment.
Does your auto insurance cover all the passengers in your car? Maybe, maybe not. We should talk. Sometimes what you think is covered isn't. I'm Summer Obernauer from Allstate. Call 412-489-6443.
Hey, what do we have here? You a Ram guy now?
Yeah, and for good reason.
Ram's got legendary power, incredible towing, and luxury everywhere you look.
Enough said.
More people are switching to Ram trucks than ever before. And now get $1,000 bonus cash if you make the switch during Ram Power Days. Or get an average $13,717 in total values on the 2019 Ram 1500 Classic. Or well-qualified returning lessees get this low-mileage lease on the 2019 Ram 1500 Classic.
What's the best-selling small tractor in America? Kubota's BX Series subcompacts. No other subcompact tractors on the market have so much power and versatility designed to fit in your garage. And if you're looking to mow right now, a 54-inch mower deck is included. Get a BX 1880 for as low as $99 a month with 0% APR financing for 84 months. Kubota's BX 1880, the only real choice.
Find a Kubota dealer near you at gokubota.com.
All right, here we go. Turn right here.
Here?
Yeah.
During the Jeep Adventure Days event, discover deals as legendary as Jeep SUV's 4x4 capability and the confidence to go where you've never gone before. This is amazing. It's more than just a test drive. It's your first adventure. Start it off with a great deal at the Jeep Adventure Days event. Well-qualified returning FCA lessees get a low-mileage lease on the 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4x4 for $259 a month.
Does your auto insurance cover all the passengers in your car? Maybe, maybe not. We should talk. Sometimes what you think is covered isn't. I'm Summer Obernauer from Allstate. 412-489-6443.
And just a reminder, with regular season football on CBS, this program, you will note, has changed its time slot just through the end of the NFL season. So we hope you'll join us for another KDPG Sunday edition next Sunday morning here in our 8:30 time slot. For Jerry Micco, I'm Ken Rice. Thanks for being with us and enjoy the rest of your weekend. So long.